anybody remember where we left off? Because I'm in different places with my different classes. So does anybody remember where we left off yesterday with the document? Like specifically which amendment we left off with? That would be helpful if anybody remembers.
I think we just finished Article 4.
Okay, so we're on the Fifth Amendment. So if you do not have the amendment
we just finished Article 3, actually.
Oh, perfect. Awesome. Thank you. So if you do not have the assignment or the document to look at, you're going to need to go to the course page. You're going to need to go to Monday and click on the period 5 button. And you're going to need to click here where it says analysis of the Bill of Rights and have that open. Okay, that's what we're looking at here for this activity. Okay. All right, so we left off with Article 3, and I'm going to kind of really briefly revisit what we already talked about. So we talked about the preamble kind of being the introduction to the document. We're looking at the preamble and the first 10 amendments. Article 1 is the Freedoms Amendment, which lays out freedom of speech, press, assembly, petition, and religion. Listed first, obviously, for a reason. Article 2, the right to bear arms. Article 3, which I mentioned yesterday, is kind of that amendment that's kind of irrelevant. We don't see it being applied in any circumstances. And I was, yesterday I mentioned to all my classes that I was pretty certain that this had never been brought up in a Supreme Court case, and I did confirm that with the official website of the Supreme Court, that this amendment had never been brought up in a case in which it had to be referenced. And this is one, obviously, I think that really shows kind of the age of the document, okay? So let's go up to Article 4, which is IV, Roman numerals. And can I get somebody to please read? Looks like my screen's frozen, so let's try this again. If I could get somebody to read, please, Article 4. Let's see here. Sinead, go ahead.
The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue, but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Okay,
thank you. So Article 4 is kind of the one about the privacy situation. You may have some questions regarding this and like the internet. I don't really want to go down that rabbit hole today because I think that could be a conversation that we may not be able to end. And all the circumstances involving that, I'm not, 100% in tune on, and there's some things that I would have to reconfirm. David, do you have a question?
It's more of a comment, but with the internet, when you buy the product, you're saying that, and when you make your account, you're saying that you're okay with them tracking you.
Yeah, that's a good point, because one of the easiest ways you can tell is if you buy something on Amazon and you do Google searches or searches on different websites, there's advertisements for that product or something similar to that. So they know exactly what, that tracking part is kind of, like you said, giving your permission to kind of keep tabs on you indirectly. So go ahead.
That's why my mom keeps on getting Oculus Quest 2 ads.
I see. In the traditional sense, Article 4 was about if you have been, let's say and I'm going to put myself in this hypothetical. If I was accused of robbing a bank, let's say I robbed a bank, and I decided to put all the money that I put in the bank robbery on my table in my kitchen because I wanted to admire my crime. Now, obviously, I wouldn't do that. I'd be the worst criminal in history. But my point is, if there's a knock at the door and the police officers want to enter and they have a warrant, it's a document that's signed by a judge that says that the police have enough evidence to search my home in connection with me and a possible crime. Okay. And if they have the warrant and they go in and they search and they find evidence, that evidence could be used against me if I'm accused of a crime. The other circumstances is if I'm silly enough to pile that money on my table, and when you open the front door, you can see straight into the room and there's that huge pile of money sitting there, and the police officers are at the door, they're going to have probable cause, given the evidence right in front of them, that I may be connected with that bank robbery, hypothetically. And so they would have enough probable cause to enter the home under that circumstances because they see the money just sitting there in plain sight. And if I was silly enough to leave it there, then that's my own fault. All right. So that's a circumstance regarding Article 4 in its traditional sense. But I will tell you, if you go on the internet, you will find tons and tons and tons of information connecting Article 4 with privacy laws in terms of internet searches, similar to what David had brought up, and other circumstances, especially online. Okay. The one thing that I always tell students to be wary of with social media is if you post things online, it's out there and you agree to the terms of using the software that that company has, like Snapchat or Twitter. And so once it's out there and it's not private. Okay. That is something that I always tell students to be careful of with posting online, because down the road you can find it. And you would hate to have something that you posted online come back to bite you in the butt later down the road when you're in a circumstance where you want to, apply for a job. I know because, nowadays with jobs, they have people that they're responsible for investigating and finding out more about potential, individuals who are applying for jobs. Okay. Article 5, Article V, Roman numeral 5. Can I get a reader for that, please? Eileen?
No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime, unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb. Nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation.
Okay, thank you. This one really has 4 different parts, okay? 3 of which are connected, 1 of which is totally different, okay? So first of all, we have the double jeopardy clause. You cannot be accused of the exact same crime twice, which means if you've gone through what's called due process of law, you were arrested, you went to trial, the evidence was brought up against you, your defense lawyer, brings up the reasons why you didn't do it, and there's a verdict in the case and a decision's made and you're found not guilty, you don't have to go through that same exact process again for that exact same crime. But we do have different levels of crimes. And so if you are found not guilty at the top level of that given crime, the prosecutor could, try you again for a slightly lesser crime, and you could be found guilty in that circumstance. It is a possibility. Sinead, do you have a question?
Yes. What if new evidence is found for the case and that proves that that person was actually guilty?
That's a great question. It would not change, because if you've gone through due process of law, even with that new evidence, the original crime that you were found not guilty of cannot be brought up against you, those charges. So it would be a circumstance where it would be a lesser level of that same charge with that new evidence that you may be found guilty of. And that's why if you are the prosecutor, the side that's trying to prove someone's guilty, you make sure you have all the things you need, all your evidence, all your information before you go to trial, okay? The second thing that's in this document or within Article 5 is not to be a witness against yourself. You may have heard about the phrase, I plead the fifth. So in this case, if you're accused of a crime, you do not have to take the witness stand to answer questions that could self-incriminate. Put yourself in a situation where you are incriminating yourself and have basically, answered questions that prove that you've committed the crime. Okay. Due process of law means you cannot be denied the process of all aspects of being arrested, going to trial, and the verdict before there is a circumstance of like the end result, whatever that may be, going to prison or whatever. Okay. The last part right here where it says, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. This is what's called eminent domain. All right. And it happens more often than you think about it. And there's a good example of this that happened recently. Two good examples. If you or anybody you know had to give up land or sold land to the government involving one aspect of the new interstate, I-69 interstate, you have been under this situation of eminent domain. And what it basically means is that if the government needs private land for public use through eminent domain, they have the right to buy that land from that individual. Now, they can't just kick you off the land and say, good luck to you. Best of luck trying to figure out what to do next. They have to pay you, but if it's a situation where the land is deemed needed for public use, the government would have the right to buy that land from you. And they're going to be paying you more than, in pretty much all cases, more than the value of the land. Now, it doesn't always work in the favor of the government. And I'll give you an example. Right now downtown, they're building a new 4th Street garage right there just south of the square where the construction is going on at 4th and Walnut. Just south of there at the corner of 3rd and Walnut, there's a real estate office. Juan Carlos Carrasquel, I think is his name. And the city wanted to buy his property to expand that parking garage. And he said no. And he won in court because the argument is that considering that the parking garage at the bottom level will have retail businesses that are private businesses, that's not completely for public use. And so the court sided with the real estate owner of that building, which is why that little building will remain there, even though they're going to be rebuilding the parking garage just beyond that. Cassidy?
How does this amendment tie in when the government's trying to buy land from Native Americans? Because even
that's
if
a good, this would not apply under the Indian relocation policies. Like if you're thinking about Andrew Jackson's Indian removal policies in 1830, that's not going to apply to this. This would not have been a circumstance necessarily. The way in which some Native American groups were able to fight that removal was through the fact that they presented treaties that were originally signed between the U.S. and Native Americans, and that allowed some tribes, at least temporarily, to stay on their land. But that's a great question, but that would not be a circumstance where the government would apply that circumstance under the Fifth Amendment. But that's a great question. Let's go to Article 6, and it does continue into the first paragraph on the left of the next page. So just so you're clear, Article 6, Roman numeral VI. Can I get a reader? I can just call on somebody. That's okay. Cassidy, okay, thanks.
in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall been previously ascertained by law.
You're fine. Sorry.
Okay. By law and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witness against him, to be compulsory process for obtaining witness in his favor, and have the assistance of a counsel for his defense.
Okay, thank you. A lot here and there. first of all, you have the right to a lawyer under the Sixth Amendment, and that cannot be denied to you in essentially all cases. You can dismiss the idea of a lawyer and defend yourself, but you have to have that opportunity to have a lawyer. Speedy and public trial means if you're arrested in April of a year, they can't have you sit in jail for an extended amount of time. You have the right to have your jail in a reasonable amount of time, and you could, if that's violated, you could have the case thrown out. Impartial jury is something that's very important because that's gone through this evolution where initially considering jurors were all white men. A lot of people point out to the fact that impartiality in juries did not happen all the way until like the 1960s or 70s, because that's only when you started to allow people of color and women to be on juries consistently across the country. So that's an interesting concept to look at. Informed of why you're being charged, confront the witnesses against you, and again, to be able to have witnesses to defend your character and prove that you may not have committed the crime. Okay, so that all in all, when you look at 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, these are all amendments that relate to someone accused of a crime. Okay, let's go to Article 7, Roman numeral VII. Let's see here. I'm just going to call on somebody, if that's okay. Who haven't I heard from for a while? Stephen, would you mind reading Article 7, please?
Okay. In suits at common law where the value and controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law.
Thank you very much. This is one of those amendments that really shows the age of the document, because $20 is obviously worth far more with inflation these days. But basically, when you talk about a case involving money, that's usually what's called a civil case, which means you have one person suing another person. Not in every situation, but in this case, you basically cannot deny the right to a trial by jury as long as the amount in question in the case is over $20. And again, if you use an inflation calculator to figure out that, you can determine that that's far more than $20 today, obviously. Okay. Article 8, Roman numeral VIII. Joyce, would you mind reading that, please?
Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted.
Okay, thank you. Bail is the amount of money that you would have to pay to get out of jail when you are arrested before you had to appear in court. Sometimes bail is not provided depending on the severity of the crime. Sometimes it's going to be a circumstance where the amount is going to be very high if the crime is more severe. Excessive fines, like if you get arrested if you get pulled over for a speeding ticket, they're not going to throw you in jail and put the bail at $100,000. You're going to get a ticket or a warning, and then you're going to be on your way. Cruel and unusual punishment inflicted, can't be denied the right to just having basic necessities like food and water. And if that was denied, you could be in a circumstance where you could have your case thrown out because they violated your Eighth Amendment right. Okay. Let's go to the last two. Article 9, Roman numeral IX. Let's see here. Theo, would you mind reading that, please?
The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be constructed to deny or disparage others retained by the people.
Okay, thank you. You can thank Alexander Hamilton for this amendment. And the reason why is because, like a lot of Federalists, he was concerned that having this Bill of Rights would make people feel as if they didn't have any other rights in addition to these. So this enumeration clause, Article 9, basically says, in addition to these amendments, you have other rights as citizens of the country that go beyond what's listed in this document. So again, the Federalists did not want people to feel as if this was the defining list of what rights you had and which rights you didn't have. Okay, and that's basically what the Ninth Amendment's about. Let's finish up with Article 10, Roman numeral X. Let's see here. Acidi?
The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people.
Thank you. Now, this amendment was the brainchild of Anti-Federalists, because the Anti-Federalists wanted to make it very clear that powers that go beyond what's in the Constitution belong to the states. So the 10th Amendment is all about protecting states' rights, because if it's not listed in the Constitution, it's a state issue, okay? And so they wanted to make it very clear that states do have rights, because obviously the big fear of the Anti-Federalists was that this new federal government was going to increase the size of the federal government and thus decrease the size of the state governments, okay? And that's why this is there in this in here. So let's just kind of reflect on this really quickly, and then we'll do a couple scenarios. These 10 amendments were all introduced and officially approved in 1791, and then 17 other amendments will come later throughout history. And we'll talk about some of those others, obviously, as we get to those parts during the course of our discussion. Some of them, obviously, in the 20th century, a lot have to do with voting. We'll talk about the amendments a little bit tomorrow that have to do with voting specifically. But what I want to do is I want to go through a couple scenarios where we can look at a circumstance of a scenario and then apply an amendment to that scenario. Okay. And so let me get started here. All right. Okay. So here's what I want you to do is, and if you can do this without your list, that's great. If not, you can look at it, but we're going to go through a couple scenarios and talk through which amendment would be used here. And the first one's, we're going to start off a little bit easier. Okay. So scenario number 1, the local military base was destroyed due to a tornado. The president requires citizens to house the displaced soldiers. So what we want to think of here is this a violation of the Constitution? Not a violation of the Constitution? And then which amendment would apply in this scenario? Maya, what do you think?
It is a violation of the Constitution due to Amendment 3. No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law.
Yep, exactly right. And again, this amendment is one that it's a very obscure, unique amendment. It's kind of like an outlier of the rest of them because it's just so specific in nature. Obviously, they wanted to make that crystal clear because of the circumstances surrounding the connection between Britain and the colonies during the American Revolution and before. But clearly, this is one that we probably won't see being applied anytime in the future. Okay. Let's go to scenario number 2. A man is found not guilty of first-degree murder. The prosecutor decides to file charges against him for the same crime with a different jury and a different judge. So violation, no violation, and then the amendment that would apply. Cassidy, what do you think?
I think this is a violation of the Fifth Amendment because if the prosecutor decides to file a charge against him, that is the exact same charge as he was found not guilty of. You can't be charged with the same crime twice. Yep,
it's a double jeopardy clause. Yep, exact same crime twice. They could charge you with something as a lower level charge, but not the same exact charge. We're going to do one more for today, and then maybe we'll do a couple more tomorrow if we have time. I know I flipped these in order. This is a good one. Elizabeth is 12 years old. Her parents are very religious, but she is not. Once a week, Elizabeth's parents make her come with them to their place of worship. Elizabeth always says she does not want to go, but her parents make her come with them anyway. It's a violation, no violation, and which amendment would apply here? Alex, what do you think?
I don't believe it's a violation. I can't remember which exact amendment, but there's a freedom of religion amendment.
That's first. Why is this not a violation though?
Because while they are taking her to their place of worship, that could entirely possibly be because they don't want to leave her at home. I think it's context here, not a strict violation of the Constitution, and it's not an action by the government.
Correct. She's a minor, so she's not 18 years of age. So one thing I always tell students is that you can't assume full protection under the amendments until you are 18 years of age. So she's a minor. She's under the authority of her parents because she's living at home. She is a minor. So this would not be a situation where her rights being violated, especially because it doesn't reference government interference in this circumstance. So very good. Okay. So tomorrow we'll maybe do a couple more of these, and then we're going to switch gears and start talking about elections. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about voter eligibility throughout history in terms of who was eligible to start, eligibility throughout time, and the struggles and challenges that came with that throughout various centuries, 18th century, 19th century, 20th century, and beyond. And we're going to talk about that in terms of when it comes down to the population that's voting in general in our country, okay? So we'll kind of evolve from that over the next 3 days and really kind of set the stage so that you are fully informed about what to expect on Tuesday in terms of how the election process works on the election day. So thanks for tuning in. I will see you all tomorrow and have a great rest of your day.